The alien marketplace was loud, hot and full of shouting. Buyers walked between cages, choosing slaves like they were animals. Tall creatures with scales, short ones with glowing eyes, all looking for something useful. In one corner, away from the lights, sat a small girl, dirty and silent. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes dull like cold glass. She didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't even move much. "She's useless," the merchant said to a group of buyers. "She can't work, she can't talk. She doesn't even know her own name." The crowd laughed and moved on. Some even spit in her direction. The girl didn't react. She had learned long ago that silence kept you safe. She had no wings like the others of her kind. She was born different. Her people believed she was cursed. They gave her away for a small price. Then the traders brought her here, hoping someone would buy her for scraps. But no one wanted a broken girl. Then, from the crowd, a human walked in. He was tall for his kind, in a brown coat, boots covered in dust. People whispered when they saw him. Humans didn't often come to this part of the galaxy. His name was Jalen, but no one there knew that yet. He walked slowly, eyes scanning the cages. He stopped in front of her. The merchant laughed. "Don't bother with that one, human. She's a waste." Jalen didn't answer. He crouched and looked at the girl. She looked back empty and tired. "Can she understand me?" he asked. The merchant shrugged. Maybe not. She's quiet all the time." "How much?" Jalen asked. The crowd chuckled, some shook their heads. "Just take her," the merchant said. "We were going to throw her out tonight anyway." Jalen looked at the girl again. Then at the merchant. "I'll give you something anyway. For your trouble," he said. He gave a few credits, not much, but enough to make the merchant smile. He opened the cage door. The girl flinched, thinking he would hit her. Instead, he held out his hand. "Come on," he said gently. She stared at the hand for a long time, then slowly reached out. Her fingers were thin, shaking like dry leaves in the wind when she touched him. Her skin felt cold. He didn't pull away. He helped her stand and they walked out together. People stared as they passed. Some laughed again. "Look at the human. Buying trash." Jalen ignored them. The girl walked quietly beside him, not speaking, not looking up. When they reached his small ship, he helped her sit and gave her a blanket. She sat there, still and silent. Staring at the floor, Jalen gave her water, some soft food, and sat nearby. Hours passed. Finally, she whispered something, her voice dry and soft. "Why?" He looked at her, surprised she spoke at all. "Why, me," she said again, not meeting his eyes. He smiled gently. "Because no one else did," he said. She blinked slowly, confused. "You're not trash," he added. "You just need someone to believe in you." Tears filled her eyes, but they didn't fall. She looked at him for a long time, her lips trying to form words, but she said nothing more that night. Later, when she lay down in the small bed on the ship, she curled into a ball. Holding the blanket close, her heart beat fast. Not from fear, but something else. A tiny light inside her, something she thought was dead. Hope, a whisper inside her said, "Maybe I'm not useless." In the dark, Jalen sat near the ship's control panel. He opened a small file and looked at a map. Then he glanced back at her sleeping form. He didn't know who she was or why he felt pulled to her, but something inside him said she was special, and he would prove it, even if no one else believed it. Far away in a cold space station, a signal blinked red. A machine had recognized her face. A deep voice said, "She's been found." The ship drifted through the dark sky, stars shining like tiny eyes watching from a distance. Inside it was quiet. Only the soft hum of engines filled the air. The girl sat by the small window, her knees pulled close to her chest, watching the stars pass. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't even ask. For her, silence had always been safer than words. Jalen, the human, moved around the small cabin, fixing wires and cleaning the control panel. He wasn't sure what to say to her. He had seen pain before, in soldiers and orphans, in broken cities, but never like this. This girl's pain felt heavier than the stars outside. He gave her food again, a soft piece of bread and a warm drink. She took it with shaking hands, whispering a small, "Thank you." Barely a sound. Jalen smiled. "You can speak," he said kindly. She looked down, afraid. "Only a little," she replied softly. Her voice was like a whisper lost in wind. He didn't push her to talk more. He just said, "That's enough for now." She nodded slowly, almost like a child learning to trust again. For days she stayed quiet when Jalen flew through storms. She would sit still, watching, never panicking. When he fixed broken panels, she handed him tools without being asked. She learned fast how to move silently through the ship, how to read the blinking lights, but she never smiled. Not once. At night, when Jalen slept, she drew shapes on the table using her finger. Glowing blue lines appeared for a few seconds, then faded. They looked like strange symbols, curves and circles connected in patterns. She didn't know why she did it. It just came naturally when she was small. She used to draw like that on the walls of her home, but her family called it a curse and locked her away. One night, Jalen woke up and saw her drawing. The light from the symbols reflected in her sad eyes. "What are those?" he asked gently. She froze, panic in her face. The lines vanished. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Stepping back, "I didn't mean to." "Hey, it's okay," he said, raising his hand calmly. "I'm not angry." He walked closer and looked at the fading symbols. They didn't look random, they looked like a code. "Do you know what they mean?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, they just come when I think too much." Jalen opened his small scanner and waved it over the spot where she had drawn. The screen blinked and beeped. A line of strange data appeared. An energy reading not normal for any species. Jalen frowned. "This isn't just light. It's energy." He looked at her. "You have something inside you." She hugged herself tightly, stepping back. "No, it's bad. People got hurt because of it." Her breathing became fast. Her hands shaking, Jalen took a slow breath. "No, listen to me. It's not bad, you just never learned how to control it." Her eyes filled with tears. "They called me dangerous." He shook his head. "They were wrong." She stared at him. Confused, he smiled softly. "You don't destroy things. You just shine too bright for people who live in darkness." She didn't understand all his words, but his voice made her heart feel warm. It was the first kind voice she had heard in years. Later, when she lay in bed, she dreamed. She was standing in a burning temple. The sky red and hot, people screamed around her. Calling her a monster, she reached out her hand. Light burst from her fingers and everything turned to fire. She woke up sweating, her heart racing. She whispered to herself, "It happened again." A single tear rolled down her cheek. In the cockpit, Jalen looked at his screen again. He compared her energy readings to old data files. Then he froze. He found a match. Records from a long-lost alien race. The Soulite children. They were believed to be extinct. Wiped out centuries ago because others feared their power. Jalen looked toward the sleeping girl, his voice soft. "You're not broken. You're rare." The next morning, the girl sat quietly eating a small breakfast. Jalen didn't mention what he had found, not yet. He asked instead, "Do you remember your name?" She shook her head. "They called me Lyra once." "I think—" "Lyra," he said. "That's a beautiful name." She blinked. Surprised no one had ever said that before. For the first time, she looked directly at him. Her eyes had a soft glow, faint but real. Something inside her was waking up, something that had been silent for too long. She whispered, "Why are you helping me?" He smiled. "Because you remind me of someone I once lost." She tilted her head, curious. "Someone like me?" He nodded slowly. Someone everyone gave up on, but who still had light inside that night. While the ship floated between the stars, Jalen recorded a message in his log. "She's special," he said quietly. "There's something inside her, something powerful, but she's afraid of it. I'll help her learn who she really is, no matter what it takes." As he closed the log, a soft sound came from behind him. He turned and saw Lyra standing in the doorway, her eyes glowing brighter than before, her hands shining faint blue. I can't stop it," she whispered in fear. Light filled the small cabin, bursting through the walls like lightning. Jalen shielded his face, shouting her name, "Lyra!" The ship trembled, alarms blaring. Outside, a wave of energy spread through space, touching faraway sensors in a distant command center. A red alert flashed across a screen. "She's alive," a voice said coldly. "Find her." Rain hit the ship's window like soft drums. The sky was dark, the stars hidden behind black clouds. A storm was coming, not just outside, but inside her too. Lyra sat in the small chair near the engine room. Her hands were shaking again, glowing faint blue in the dim light. She stared at them, afraid. No matter how much she tried to hide it, the light came back, stronger each time. It was no longer just strange symbols or sparks. Now it felt like something was waking up inside her, something wild. Jalen stood nearby, watching her from the shadows. He didn't speak, didn't move too fast. He had learned she needed time, like a flower scared to bloom. Finally, he stepped closer and sat on the floor in front of her. "I saw what happened last night," he said gently. "I didn't mean to," Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. "I never want to hurt you," Jalen nodded. "I know you didn't hurt me." She looked at him, confused, but everything shook, the alarms. "I broke something." "You're not breaking things," Jalen said softly. "You're becoming who you really are." Tears formed in her eyes. "No, when I was little, I burned a temple," she said, voice full of guilt. "There were people inside." Jalen's heart ached. "Was it on purpose?" "No," she cried. "I was scared. I didn't understand." The light came out like fire, and it wouldn't stop. "Then it wasn't your fault," he said. "You were a child, left alone with something powerful." She covered her face with her hands, the glow leaking between her fingers. Suddenly, the ship shook hard. An alarm beeped from the front. Jalen jumped up, checking the controls. The storm had found them. Electric winds were pushing the ship off course. "We're going down," he muttered. "Hold on." The ship crashed into a jungle-covered moon. Branches snapped, metal groaned, fire sparked from the engines. When everything went quiet, the ship sat sideways, half buried in mud and broken trees. Jalen woke up with a bleeding forehead. His arm was twisted, his breath short. "Lyra," he called out, voice dry. He looked around and found her lying on the floor. Eyes closed, he crawled to her, checked her breathing. She was alive. Relief filled his chest. "You're okay," he whispered. He lifted her carefully, wrapping her in a blanket. The ship was broken but safe enough for now. He needed rest, but danger wasn't far. Later that night, strange sounds echoed outside. Low growls, footsteps in wet grass. Alien beasts, hunters of the night, had smelled blood. Jalen grabbed his laser knife and stood by the broken door. One creature lunged at him, big, with 6 red eyes and sharp teeth. He fought, slashing and blocking, but his arm was weak. Another beast charged, knocking him back. Jalen hit the wall hard, falling to the ground. The creature roared, raising its claws. He closed his eyes, ready for pain, but it didn't come. A blast of light shot through the air. The beast flew back, smashing into a tree. Jalen looked up, stunned. Lyra stood behind him, arms glowing, eyes bright like twin moons. Her body floated a few inches above the ground, hair rising in the air. The light around her pulsed like a living heart. The other creatures backed away, growling, confused and afraid. Lyra raised her hands, and with one silent breath, a wave of energy swept through the jungle. The trees bent, the air screamed, and the beasts ran, vanishing into the shadows. Then the light faded and Lyra dropped to her knees. She was crying again, not from fear, but from shame. "I didn't want to. I didn't mean to." Jalen pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "You saved us," he whispered. "You saved me." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "But I used the light, the fire." Jalen nodded. "And you controlled it. You used it to protect, not destroy." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then, for the first time, she said, "I was always afraid of it. But it listens to me now." He smiled, brushing the hair from her face. "Then we'll learn together," he said. "You're not alone anymore." They stayed there until the sun rose over the broken jungle. Birds with crystal wings flew above. Singing in strange tones, Lyra sat beside the ship. Watching the light dance through the leaves, she remembered the temple, the fire, the screaming people. But this morning felt different. The fire inside her no longer scared her. It felt like part of her, like something she could trust. In the distance, on another world, a silver ship rose from its base. Inside, a masked figure looked at a glowing screen. "Confirmed," he said. "The Soulite is active. Then begin the hunt," the commander growled. "She cannot be allowed to rise back on the jungle moon." Lyra turned to Jalen. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not being afraid of me." He looked at her, his voice calm but strong. "I'm not afraid," he said. "I'm proud." The jungle moon was quiet again. Too quiet, Lyra could feel something strange in the air. Not the animals, not the wind, but eyes. Watching, waiting, she sat by the broken ship with her knees pulled close. Her hands no longer glowing, but her heartbeat was fast. Jalen was fixing a signal beacon near the engine. He kept checking the sky, his hands moving fast. "We don't have much time," he said. "This place isn't safe anymore." Lyra looked up. "Is someone coming?" Jalen nodded slowly. That energy wave from your light, someone saw it. Who? She asked softly. He paused before answering. People who hunt power like yours. Far away on a Black Star cruiser. A man in dark armor stood before a holoscreen. It showed Lyra's face, her glowing eyes frozen in a captured moment. This is her, the man said. The last soul light. She's dangerous, said the officer beside him. Should we alert the council? The man shook his head. No, we bring her in quietly. Alive? If possible, the man replied coldly. She belongs to us. Back on the jungle moon. Jalen handed Lyra a small device. This is a tracker, he said. If we get separated, press this. I'll find you. Lyra held it tightly, her fingers trembling. I don't want to be alone again, she whispered. Jalen looked her in the eyes. You won't be. Not while I'm breathing, that night. They made camp in the jungle. The fire was small. Hidden under thick leaves, Lyra sat beside it, her face lit by the warm glow. Jalen handed her a thin screen showing an old archive. Look, he said, pointing to an ancient symbol. It matched the pattern she drew with her fingers. This is from the Temple of Soullight, he explained. Your people didn't disappear. They were hunted. Lyra's eyes filled with sadness. Because of the light inside them, Jalen nodded. The light scared others, they didn't understand it. She looked down. Maybe it really is dangerous. He shook his head. It's not the light, it's fear that turns it into a weapon. Suddenly, the air turned cold. Lyra felt something sharp in her chest, like a whisper. They're here, she said quietly. Standing up, Jalen reached for his weapon. How do you know? I don't know how, she said, but I can feel them. They want to cage me. Moments later, a loud thud echoed through the jungle. A dark pod landed near the trees, its doors sliding open with a hiss. 4 armored bounty hunters stepped out, scanning the area. She's close, one of them said. The energy trail is fresh. Jalen pulled Lyra behind a rock wall. We need to run, he whispered. Lyra's body trembled, but her eyes were clear. No more running, she said. If I keep hiding, they'll keep hunting. She stepped forward. Her hands glowing faintly, Jalen grabbed her arm. You're not ready to fight them. I'm not fighting, she said. I'm showing them I'm not afraid anymore. The bounty hunters surrounded the camp. Weapons aimed, one of them shouted, You! Soullight girl, come with us or we take you by force. Lyra stood still, the firelight dancing in her eyes. I won't go back to a cage, she said, voice calm but strong. Jalen stood beside her, blaster ready. Last warning, he growled. She's not alone. The leader of the hunters laughed. One human against all of us? Brave or stupid? Both, Jalen replied and fired. The jungle lit up with flashes of light and noise. Jalen ducked and rolled, shooting with precision. But there were too many, 3 against 1. He got hit in the shoulder, fell to the ground, groaning in pain. The leader walked toward him, gun aimed at Jalen's head. Not so tough now, he said with a smirk. Suddenly the ground shook. Leaves rose in the air. Lyra's body floated up slowly, her eyes glowing like twin stars. She raised her hand and everything stopped. The hunters froze in place, unable to move, their weapons dropped. Faces full of shock and fear. What is this? One of them gasped. Lyra's voice echoed, soft but full of power. You wanted the light, she said. Now feel what it sees. A pulse of energy spread through the jungle, not violent, but deep and cold. The hunters fell to the ground, not dead but unconscious. Lyra landed softly on the ground, breathing hard. Jalen looked up at her, amazed. You controlled it, he said. His voice weak, she knelt beside him, touching his wound. A soft light passed from her hand to his skin, closing the cut gently. I didn't burn anything this time, she whispered. Almost like a child, Jalen smiled. You did perfect. Above them, a drone blinked red. It had seen everything. It sent a message back to the Black Star cruiser. The man in armor stared at the recording. She's growing stronger, he said. Send the elite, he ordered. We take her now or we lose her forever. Back on the jungle moon. Lyra sat beside Jalen as he rested. She looked up at the stars through the leaves. They called me useless, she said quietly. But now they're afraid of me. Jalen opened his eyes. Good, he said. Let them be. The stars looked different now, brighter, louder, like they were whispering to her. Lyra sat on top of the broken ship, legs crossed, hands resting on her knees. A small circle of light floated around her fingers. She wasn't afraid of it anymore. Not completely. Below her, Jalen worked on rewiring the ship's communication tower. Just a bit more, he muttered, sparks flying from the wires. They had fixed most of the damage from the crash, but the power surge from her light had changed things. Inside the ship, and inside her, you feel it, don't you? Jalen asked, glancing up. Lyra nodded slowly. It's like something's waking up. Something old, he said, and powerful. For the first time in her life, she didn't hide her light. She let it rise from her palms, soft and slow like a breath. When she closed her eyes, she saw shapes, memories that weren't hers, a temple made of glass, children with light in their eyes, flying above stars, and a voice, always a voice, saying, "Don't forget who you are." Lyra opened her eyes, glowing softly. "I remember pieces," she said, "of the Soul-Light people." Jalen looked at her with respect, not fear. "You carry them now," he said. "You're their echo." Suddenly, the repaired beacon blinked blue. Someone was listening. Jalen checked the screen, then frowned. "We're not alone anymore," he said. A signal had been picked up. Someone far away had heard her pulse of light. Friend or enemy? Lyra asked. "Not sure yet," he replied. "But we should be ready." They left the jungle moon in the repaired ship, flying low under scanner range. Jalen set a course to an old station in the outer rim, a hidden place once used by the rebels long ago. There, he said, they might find answers and safety. But Lyra's name had already begun to spread. Whispers in shadow markets, bounty boards lighting up with her face, Soul Light girl seen on jungle moon. One human with her. Danger level. Extreme. Some feared her, some wanted her, but most just wanted to catch her before she became unstoppable. As they landed at the edge of the old station, the world was silent. No guards, no lights, just cold metal halls and dust in the air. "This place looks dead," Lyra said, stepping inside. "Dead doesn't mean empty," Jalen replied, hand on his blaster. They moved through the dark, using her light to guide the way. Finally, they found it, a small chamber hidden beneath the station floor. Inside was a pedestal, and on it, a crystal cube glowing faint blue. Lyra stepped closer, drawn to it like it was part of her. When she touched it, the room came alive. Lights burst from the walls, symbols lit up the air. A message played in an ancient voice. "To the last of the Soul Light. We left this for you. Your power is not a weapon. It is memory, light, and life." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't the last because she was weak. She was the last because the others had been erased. She wasn't cursed. She was chosen. Jalen watched her carefully. "You were never useless," he said. "They were just blind." She smiled for the first time in days, a real smile, not because she felt safe, but because she felt seen. Just then, alarms rang out across the station. "Ships incoming," Jalen said, eyes wide. Lyra closed the cube and stepped forward. "I'll face them," she said. "Not alone," Jalen replied, loading his weapon. "Never alone." Outside, enemy ships landed with thunder. Armored troops rushed into the halls, shouting orders, scanning for heat signs. They expected a child, scared and hiding. They found a girl standing in light, eyes glowing, back straight, hands raised. Lyra stepped into the open. "I don't want to fight," she said, voice calm but loud. One soldier fired anyway. The bolt never touched her. It stopped in the air, frozen, then turned to dust. The soldiers hesitated. "What is she?" One whispered. "She's Soul Light." Another said, "Run." But others didn't run. They fired again, storming forward. Jalen ran to her side, blasting with speed. Lyra closed her eyes and released the light, this time not in fear. A wave of soft energy spread from her heart like music. Everything went still. The lights turned gold. The air hummed, and the enemy soldiers fell to their knees, not from pain but from memory. Visions flooded them, of the temples, the skies, the people they had erased. Tears fell from their eyes. Jalen watched, stunned. "You didn't just stop them," he whispered. "You made them feel." Lyra breathed slowly. "I didn't destroy," she said. I remembered. In the sky above, other ships circled, watching her from afar. Some wanted to run, some wanted to follow, and others began to believe. She had risen, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. The last soul light had become a flame the galaxy couldn't ignore. The station was quiet now. The soldiers who came to take her had all fallen, not in death, but in memory. Lyra had shown them what they had destroyed, and for the first time they cried. But peace doesn't last in a galaxy ruled by fear. Above the planet, in the darkness of space, a much larger fleet arrived. Not bounty hunters this time, but warships, heavy and cold with one purpose: capture the Soul Light girl, or erase her forever. In the command room of the lead ship stood the masked commander. He had no name, only a rank. He had studied the Soul Light for years. He believed their light was dangerous, unpredictable, and had no place in the new galaxy. "She has awakened," he said, watching the screen, "and that means she must fall." Back at the station, Lyra stood near the old window, watching the stars. She felt something again, something heavy in the air. "They're coming," she whispered. Jalen walked beside her, his arm bandaged from the last battle. "How many?" he asked. "A fleet," she replied softly. "They're afraid of what I've become." Jalen took a breath, looked around the quiet room. "We can't fight that many," he said. "Not with blasters." Lyra looked at him, her face calm. "Then I'll fight with light," she said, "but not to kill." "Then what?" Jalen asked. "To wake them," she said, "like I did the others." Jalen placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not that scared girl in the cage anymore," he said. "You're something they never expected." The station's emergency systems came alive. Alarms, blinking lights, echoing voices. Enemy ships had landed, hundreds of soldiers storming toward them. This time, they had machines, drones, pulse cannons, sound screamers built to crush minds. Lyra stood at the center of the hall, her eyes glowing bright. The walls shook from the incoming march. Jalen stood behind her with a small group of rebels who had joined them after the last battle. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "I never was alone," she replied, smiling gently. The first wave of soldiers broke through the metal doors, blasters raised, faces covered in metal masks. One shouted, "Surrender or burn." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Soul Light," she said, "and I do not surrender." She raised her hands and the light flowed from her like a river, not harsh, not angry, but warm and deep. The light moved across the hall like mist, touching everything. The soldiers opened fire, but the bullets turned to dust. Their weapons overheated, their machines froze, they screamed. But not in pain. They were seeing her memories, her childhood, the cage, the fire, the silence, the moment Jalen held her and called her priceless. Some dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Others tried to run, but the light followed them, soft but firm. It wasn't burning them. It was changing them, making them feel. The commander watched from his ship above. "Send the wipe bomb," he ordered. "It will erase everything in a 5-mile zone, including her." "No survivors?" the pilot asked. "No regrets," the commander said coldly. Down on the station, a strange silence fell. Lyra looked up, her eyes full of light. "They're going to wipe this place," she said. "All of us." Jalen looked at her. "Then what do we do?" Lyra closed her eyes. "We don't run," she said. "We rise." She floated up, glowing so bright it hurt to look. The others stepped back. Shielding their eyes, the walls shook again. But this time not from war, but from awakening. Lyra called on everything inside her. Every moment she was called useless. Every time she was thrown away. Every breath of pain, and every whisper of hope. And she let it go. A wave of pure soul light burst from her body. It moved upward, faster than fire, stronger than steel. It struck the wipe bomb before it touched the station. And for the first time in the galaxy's history, a weapon of silence was stopped by the voice of a girl. The bomb cracked, twisted, and shattered into dust. The sky turned white for a moment, then calm, then peace on the command ship. Silence fell. The commander stared at the empty screen. What? What is she? He whispered. No one answered, because there were no words left. Back on the station, Lyra landed gently. She looked tired but unbroken. The rebels stepped forward, bowing their heads. Not because she asked, but because they believed. Jalen walked to her side. You stopped the future they tried to write, he said. She looked at him, her voice soft. No, she replied, I rewrote it. The battle was over. The sky above the station was quiet. The stars blinking like gentle candles. No more enemy ships, no more shouting voices. Just silence and light. Lyra stood at the heart of the station, her eyes still glowing softly. She looked around at the people gathered. Rebels, former enemies, wanderers, and children, some with tears, some with hope. They had seen what she could do. Not just her power, but her heart. A small alien girl stepped forward, holding a broken doll. Are you a queen? She asked shyly. Lyra smiled and knelt down, touching the girl's hand. No, she said gently. I'm just someone who didn't give up. The girl smiled back and ran to her mother, whispering, She's not scary. She's kind, Jalen watched from the side, leaning on a cane, his shoulder still healing. He had seen everything. He had watched Lyra rise from the dust, from a silent, broken girl in a cage, to a light that warmed even the coldest corners of the galaxy. You did it, he said as she walked to him. She looked down. I didn't want to hurt anyone. You didn't, he replied. You helped them remember who they were, too. News of what happened at the station spread fast. Across systems and sectors, people spoke her name. Some whispered it in fear, others with respect. Solite, the last one, and the brightest in the days that followed, leaders from different worlds arrived, not to fight, but to ask, Who are you? What will you do now? What do you want? Lyra stood in the circle of leaders, calm and steady. I don't want a throne, she said. I don't want power. I want no more cages for children born different. I want no more fear when someone shines too bright. I want a galaxy where light doesn't have to hide. Some of the leaders nodded, some lowered their heads in shame. They had once signed the order to erase the soul light. Now they stood in front of one, alive and unbroken. What would you have us do? One asked quietly. Tell the truth, she said. Start there. Later, alone with Jalen, Lyra walked through the garden on the station roof. It was small, filled with wild plants that had survived the battle. They called me useless, she said softly. I remember every word, every look, every hand that pushed me away. Jalen looked at her. And what do you feel now? She closed her eyes, feeling the wind. Not anger, she said, not anymore. I feel free. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small stone. It was smooth, round, and glowing faint blue. I want to build something, she said. A place for children like me. A place where no one calls them useless. A place where broken wings are still allowed to fly. Jalen smiled. Then we'll build it together, and so it began. Not a palace, not a fortress, but a sanctuary, a home at the edge of the stars, where light was welcome and silence was healed. Lyra became more than a name, she became a promise. That even the smallest spark could burn through the deepest shadow, that even the girl they sold for nothing was always priceless. Years passed, stories were told in markets and schools, of the human who saw worth in the one everyone ignored, of the girl who used her light not to destroy, but to remind. And in the quiet garden on the roof, 2 chairs sat beneath a glowing tree, one for the man who believed, and one for the girl who became light itself. She was never a weapon, she was never a curse, she was always so light.